What's up, fellas? Welcome to a brand new episode of The Sports Student. My name is Wendell Epps, aka The Sports Student. In today's podcast, I'll be interviewing Lisa Redmond. Lisa currently works as a host and social media coordinator at the Premier Lacrosse League, also known as the PLL. And in this podcast, she'll talk about her journey to the PLL and also give some great advice on how to succeed in the sports media industry as a whole. So sit back, relax, enjoy the podcast, and without further ado, this is a sports student interview with Lisa Redmond. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Sports Student. My name is Wendell Epps, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Lisa Redmond. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How are you doing, and how's your summer been going?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Summer's been very busy with the PLL season in full force right now, but just super excited that we were able to get a season off and just have been having a ton of fun traveling around the country.
That's fantastic to hear. So can you go ahead quickly and just explain what exactly do you do with the PLL?
Sure. So I'm a social media coordinator for the PLL. So I manage 3 of our 8 teams' social media accounts. So everything you see from that team on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, every social media you can think of, we touch. I also am a host for them as well. So I was a co-host of a YouTube show called The Fast Break, as well as a podcast called The Inside Feed. And then I also help out with PR stuff. So managing local press that comes to our game weekends. If we have an announcement, doing outreach to press to get our stories on their website. So I do a little bit of everything for the company.
That's fantastic to hear. And I'm really intrigued that you do a lot of work on the social media side, because we all know that social media is a big part of our society nowadays. And it's a big part of the sports media industry as a whole. So I want to know which social media platform have you seen provide the most benefits for the sports media industry? And which one do you feel like has actually sort of just been the bad one when it comes to sports media?
I think it's all about how you approach the platforms when you're working on them. I think Twitter is a ton of fun for tweeting, like when you're actually in game and seeing people's live reactions to things that are happening in game and sort of like making that connection with fans on Twitter. I know for myself as a fan of sports, just like I love being on Twitter during a super intense game because I just like reading everyone else's thoughts that they're having similar to mine. Where Instagram, you can put some more like premium content in there, really, I think, build storylines around players, teams on Instagram. So I think I wouldn't say one is better or not as good as the other. I think it's all about learning how to approach each platform when you're running a social account and figuring out like what content works on one, might not work on the other, and sort of figuring out what works on those platforms and then utilizing that to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that's really fascinating that you say that. I mean, I think that's a great point. Like a lot more people do need to hear that social media, like, it's really how you use it. Like you can make anything how you want it to be as long as you use it the right way. So for you, do you have like a memorable like social media posts you made that just like made you like really appreciate working with social media and all that?
Yeah, I think with each of my teams, how I approach their social is all very different. And I try to really tap into player personalities. I currently run the Whip Snakes account, who are our back-to-back champions. So they've been a ton of fun to run their account, obviously, because when you're the champion, it makes your life a little bit easier in terms of like posting content and all of that stuff. So I really enjoyed that side of it, of being on the winning side. And then I've taken some of our accounts that didn't have teams that didn't have great winning records or players that were necessarily like the faces of our league, and have really figured out what makes that team click, what makes that player special, and sort of building that account around those players. So I think for me, just the most fun I've had is building our accounts and around our players and really getting our fans to know these teams. I've been working with these teams back since 2019, which was our first season. So I really have built these accounts from the ground up. And so I think just learning how our fans react to each different team and what they like and what they don't like has been really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how do you come up? Because I know like you got to come up with like some pretty cool captions sometimes. Like how do you do that? What's your process with that?
I try to just be as like loose as possible. I think sometimes in game time, if you like think about a caption way too hard, like it's just not going to come out the right way, or it's not going to be as fun as you want it to be. Like I said, going back to Twitter, like a lot of times if there's something that like I would tweet from my own personal account in reaction to a play that just happened, sometimes I'll just use that as the caption because I feel like it taps into what our fans are seeing and what they're feeling as well. So I think it all depends on the type of content, but I try to be as relaxed and think about what our fans would like as much as possible and what they're feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And like you working in social media, like a lot of what you do is really like dependent on like what you see, like the fans, like how they're reacting to it. So for you, like how do you
Yep.
kind of like use that to like help enhance your skills with like kind of addressing and like looking at the fan engagement that you're getting from all your posts?
Yeah, I think reading comments after you post things is super important, especially if it's around an individual player. If you post something in regards to one player opposed to an entire team, and seeing how fans react to it, because you can really get the pulse of like, oh, our fans are really loving this player, or our fans are really loving, our attack line or something like that. So I think really listening to what the fans are posting, both positive and negative, because sometimes they might be seeing something in a way that you don't see it, I think is really important. And then sort of adjusting, you don't let the fans dictate what you post, but I think really listening to what they like is super important when it comes to content creation.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think it's really cool that you're working in the PLL because I feel like that's a league that has a lot of potential. Like it's going to be taken off very like rapidly within the next couple of years. So for you,
Mhm.
what would you describe the PLL as to someone who may not have ever watched a game in it yet?
Yeah. Well, so lacrosse is the fastest growing sport in North America.
Yes.
I know you're probably very familiar with it growing up in Virginia. I grew up in Maryland, so was very familiar with it. Didn't play it, but was just around it a ton growing up in the area. I typically describe it to people as like hockey on grass. The way it's played is very similar. The positions are very similar. It's very physical. In the PLL, we've actually shortened the field, so it's game goes faster, and we also shortened the shot clock. So typically in college, up to like last week, I think it was, the shot clock in college was like 80 or 82 seconds. We shortened it down to 52 seconds, so it makes the game go by way faster, and the actual player movement go by way faster because the field is shorter and they have less time to have the ball in their stick. So it's a really fun game to watch. Our players get super creative. They score, which is also fun. And then we also do some more broadcast things of like going under the helmet with players in games. So a lot of leagues do that during their all-star games. We do it during every single game that we have. So we have our broadcasters in the booth, have mics. We mic up a couple of our players, put a mic in their helmet, and they can actually speak to our players in the middle of a game and say like, oh, you just scored that goal, like walk us through what you saw, and the player will answer it right there in the spot on the broadcast. So we've tried to be as innovative as possible, and it's proving that it's working, and it's a quickly growing sport.
That's very cool. I love that whole concept of like the players being able to like hear the broadcasters. That sounds super cool.
Yeah, and it's so much fun too when you're watching, just because you become fans of players because you relate to them in some way, or there's a quality about them that you like, and I think it really gives our players personalities and make them even more connected to our fans when they can hear their thoughts in the middle of a game.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like more than just like connecting to a player based on like the talent level that they have. You also can like get to know them like as a person, which is very important because like these athletes are still human beings at the end of the day. So
yeah, and something we've really taken note of when we started the league was that fans are becoming fans of individual players and not so much teams as a whole. I mean, you see it happening more so in modern day sports of people are, a fan of LeBron James, but not necessarily a fan of the Lakers as a whole. So when we brand our teams and our athletes, we really put that in mind of like, who are our superstars that can really help us grow the sport? Like how can we take someone who is maybe a rookie in the league and help them build their brand and find their voice and figure out how to use social to their advantage. So that's something we really take account of when we're posting on social and helping our players.
Yeah, most certainly. And I'd like to ask you, like, where do you see the PLL taking off within the next 5 to 10 years? Where would you like to see it kind of go to?
Yeah, I think it's only going to get bigger and better. Right now, we have 10 regular season weekends, a couple playoffs as well. We're broadcast on NBC, so you can find our games on NBC at NBCSN on Peacock. I think it's going to become, the hope is that it becomes like an NBA or an NFL where it's a regularly scheduled event in people's lives. On the weekends, on a Saturday afternoon, they're going to turn on a lacrosse game, hopefully, and that'll just be the norm. So we're definitely taking some huge steps in getting there, and everything's trending in the right direction. And so we're hoping that, over the next couple of years, it'll become a major sport in this country.
Yeah, fingers crossed with that one. I mean, lacrosse is a great sport. I've had a chance to cover it at my school, and it's amazing. And how do you, with the rules of lacrosse, because I know they can be, like all over the place. Have you been able to kind of adjust to all the new different rules that seem to come every year?
Yeah, so I was really evergreen when I started working for the PLL. Like I said, I was around lacrosse growing up, but I didn't play. So I didn't really know the ins and outs of the sport, and I really have learned as I've gone working here. So that was probably to my advantage of nothing. It was all new to me. None of the rules were changing to me because that's just how I've been used to them since I started working here. So it's been pretty easy because I've just been learning as I go, and nothing has been, I'm not like, oh, the shot clock should be 82 seconds instead of 52 seconds. This is just how the process has been to me forever. So that's probably helpful in my job.
Yeah, most definitely. So I'd like to ask you now, what was Lisa Redmond like growing up? How did you get the love for sports? What teams did you root for? Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So I'm a Baltimore girl. So Baltimore sports have always been my favorite. I was actually a dancer growing up. So dance was my first passion, still my passion for sure. But I would say I became a really big Ravens fan when I was in middle school. I would spend my Sundays watching it with my family and going to games, and Ravens football is really big in the Maryland area. And I grew up in a time too where the Ravens have been pretty good for most of my life. So it's made it enjoyable to watch. So I don't know, I just got a love of the Ravens and watching it and just how exciting it was, to be a part of a game day, to watch a game live or even from the couch. And I think because of my dance background, when I was going into college, I knew I wanted to do something that was fun, that I would enjoy. And I already sort of had that entertainment background from being a dancer growing up. So I was like, let me just combine two of my favorite things of entertainment and sports, and let's see where this takes me. So when I went to Salisbury University, I went in sort of knowing what I wanted to do, which was super helpful. But for me, it's always, I just have wanted to do something I enjoy. And for me, sports has always been super enjoyable to watch and to attend games. So I was like, let's try to make this a career.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sports is one of those places where you can just go crazy, have fun, no one will judge you, because the craziest things happen in sports world. So it's definitely crazy. I have to ask you, what do you think about the Ravens? How do you think they're going to do this season?
I mean, I still have I was actually just listening to the Ravens podcast with Lamar Jackson. They just had him on. I'm a very big Lamar fan. I'm hoping, we've been pretty good the last couple of seasons with Lamar. Was really happy when we won that playoff game last year, so he could sort of get over that hump. But yeah, obviously it's for any team, it's Super Bowl or bust. That's what we want. I think we're taking the right steps in that direction. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's been good. The Ravens have at least been in the playoff hunt every year. There's some NFL teams you're fans of, and they don't make the playoffs. At least you have the chance to at least be in the mix, sort of thing. Going back to you working in social media, I want to know how have you seen, like, do you have like a different perspective on social media than probably just like a normal person, just because like you're around it so much?
For sure. I think when you're watching sports games, like just as an observer, when you're not working them, you'll see a moment that happens and you'll be like, oh, that's so funny. Like they need to turn that into a meme, or like that's such a good highlight. They need to post that. Like that's just how your brain works when you're watching sports. Um, so it's sort of hard sometimes to watch sports because the social media person in you, you're like, oh, like that's such a good moment. Like they should be highlighting this, or they should be highlighting that, or like they should get that fan's reaction and post it. So it's a little bit different, but yeah. And I think too, just even outside of sports, if I look at like an influencer's Instagram or a brand's Instagram, like you can really tell who's doing a good job versus who's not. And so I do think you look at social media differently. It's a little hard to disconnect from it as well, because I feel like most people are on their phone a ton as it is, and then when it's your job, you're on it like twice as more. So if I have some downtime, I really do try to like step away from my phone. But it's pretty hard being a social media person and and not being on your phone.
Yeah, definitely. And like, what advice would you give to someone that's in high school or college? They want to like work like that social media side of things. So what are some things that you did like in your college career to help you prepare for that? And like, what advice would you give to those kind of students?
Yeah, I always tell kids, I shouldn't call them kids, I always tell students that just to try as many different aspects of sports as you can. There's so many different parts of it, whether it's social media or brand partnerships, or actually like being a part of the operations team, or working in, on the medical side of things. Like figure out what it is that you like, because I think a lot of people go into this industry thinking it's going to be this glamorous fun job, which it is, but it's also a ton of work. Like you work 7 days, and in season you work 7 days a week, all hours of the day. And then you add traveling on top of that. Like it can be a lot. So I think figuring out what it is that you like, and sometimes people will be like, oh, I want to work in social media, and they'll start working in social and they'll realize, actually this isn't for me, I want to work in this area, which is totally fine. So just figuring out what it is that you like, and there's so many different areas of a game day and of a sports team or league that you can be a part of, and just figuring that out, and never being afraid to like take a smaller job or do a smaller task. I think people think like, oh, I want to work at ESPN, and it's like, yes, so does everyone else. Like getting to that point, like I started out at a local news station as a production assistant on the morning show. I had to get to work at 4:30 in the morning every day and made like little to no money. And then I was a digital content producer at NBC Sports Washington. Again, worked really early mornings, commuted an hour to work, like lived at home with my parents because I couldn't afford to move out. And so it's just like you have to like be ready to pay your dues. You're gonna have to pay your dues because there's so many people that want to be in this space. And if you just show that you can work hard and keep at it, and don't let any obstacle get in your way, or think something is way too small for you, I think you'll find success.
Yeah, definitely. You just gotta climb that ladder and like trust the process, because like you never know where you're gonna end up to in the sports media industry. You can end up in some of those craziest cities in the country.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think my two jobs I had before PLL like have led me to the PLL.
Right.
And I've learned so many different areas of, like I said, my first job was in news. I was doing production and behind the scenes. And then my second job was writing blogs and doing a little bit of social work. And then now here I am running 3 team accounts and doing press stuff. And it's so like, I've done a ton of different things. And someone asked me once, like, what was my least favorite job? And I was like, honestly, I wouldn't say any of them, because I think all of them have like led me to this job and have given me so much insight that I've used in this job, or that I'll use down the line. So yeah, don't think you're like too big for any sort of job, because it will likely lead you to like, your next step or wherever you want to be.
Yeah, most certainly. Like, just how cool is it? Like, cause like you got to be able to like enter the PLL like when it first started. So like, just how awesome was that to like be like part of like the actual like beginning process?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I don't know if like in the moment I really realized like how monumental that was. I think looking back now, 2 years into this, it's crazy to think and be like, oh my God, like I literally attended the first game in PLL history. Like it's wild to think about. And I think it's something like it's an experience that I think not a lot of people will ever get, of building a sports league from the ground up. So I'm really appreciative of that. And I know it's something that like I'll look back on my career and be so thankful that like I had this time here at the PLL and was able to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And is like there anything that you wish you knew in college about like sports media, social media, anything like that that maybe you didn't learn till a little bit later?
Not necessarily. I think so much of what I've learned has just come from hands-on experience and working in the business and just learning um in my different jobs. Um Mostly like I said, when I was in college, I remember graduating thinking like, oh, it's going to be so easy for me to get a job, like whatever. And then I started applying and that was not the case. So like I said, a couple minutes ago, like don't think any job is too small for you or it's not the right fit, because it will eventually lead you to where you want to be. And honestly, just getting your foot in the door is like the first thing is like the biggest thing and the first thing you really need to do. Like if you can get your foot in the door, like possibilities are endless for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sky's the limit when you're able to get that foot in the door. So like for you, like just like looking back on all your stuff in the PLL so far, what has been your favorite memory in the league?
Well, like I said, the Whip Snakes account that I run, back-to-back champions. So being there for that and witnessing every single one of their games and just feeling the thrill of like winning the first championship we had was absolutely crazy. It went into overtime. We had a sellout crowd in Philly. It was one of the most like, it was one of those days that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And then watching them in the bubble last year go back to back, and after a crazy year and crazy circumstances, was also super enjoyable. So that and just like the relationships I've built with our players and coaches is something I take a lot of pride in. I consider a lot of our players and coaches like good friends. So looking back, I think that's something that I am really proud of, and something I hold really close to my heart is just the relationships that I built over the last 2 years. Laura Oakman, who's a sideline reporter for Fox Sports, is one of my mentors. And I remember she's always like engraved in us that like the relationships you build with these people is like far more important than anything you'll ever do. Like having their trust and them knowing that they can trust you with information or whatever it may be is so important. So I've always tried to approach my jobs or players or coaches that I've worked with that way. So that's something that I'm really proud of is my relationships with these guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's important because you're able to gain that like trust from them, and it just makes it a lot more easier. You guys are both like really comfortable too. It's not like nerve wracking or anything. So are there any like players or coaches that you feel like, you've just been really able to like connect to and you just like consider to be really close friends?
Yeah, there's a couple, mostly on the teams that I run, just because I spend so much time with them on game days.
Right.
I'm really good friends with Will Manny on the Archers. He's an attackman. He's having a great season. Matt Rambo, who was our first ever MVP. Like I went and had dinner at his family's house when we were in Philadelphia for the championship. So just a lot of guys on all the teams that I help run that I'm close with.
That's awesome. And how do you balance like that grueling work schedule with the PLL while also still maintaining, a social and personal life?
Yeah, it's tough for sure. I try to sleep as much as possible if I can, especially on flights. Our first half of the season was mostly on the East Coast. So I live in LA now. So a lot of cross country flights. So a lot of sleeping is what I try to do on those flights. And then just taking time for myself, making sure that I work out, just to, keep my like mental and physical health top of mind, even if it's just like I live close to the beach. So any excuse I can have to like go for a nice long walk in the evenings, beach, like I take it. And yeah, just trying to stay connected with family and friends as much as possible. It's definitely hard. And most people understand these 4 months of the season, I'm sort of MIA a lot of the times, but Yeah, just I'm very like schedule. I work well with a schedule. So when I am not on the road and home, I sort of try to stick to my schedule and make sure I get workouts in or see my friends, etc.
Yeah, for sure. Is dancing still like a part of like your normal routine? You still like to do that every once in a while?
Yeah, I try to go and take classes in LA. I mean, LA is like huge like hub for professional dancers, and there's a ton of studios out here. So, any chance I get, I try to go and take a class. I like humble myself when I go and remind myself that these are professionals, and that I haven't like extensively in a really long time. But any chance I can go take class, I do.
That's awesome to hear. All right, Lisa. Well, I want to go ahead and I want to end this interview asking you a couple rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
Cool.
All right, let's do it. First question here. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, probably like transportation, consider like ability to fly, I guess.
Okay.
As someone who's on planes a lot, like being able to get somewhere in a second opposed to a 6 hour flight would be great. So
Oh
I'd
yeah,
probably say that.
definitely. That'd be a lifesaver for sure. What's
Yeah.
one city that you have not visited, but you'd like to visit someday?
We haven't gone to like the Northwest yet. So
Mm-hmm.
like Seattle, I've never been to Seattle. Portland, like those are really big lacrosse, up and coming lacrosse hotbeds. So I would
Yeah,
love to get up there and visit and have a PLL game up there sometime.
that's awesome. What's one food you can't live without?
Pasta. Love
Pasta.
pasta.
Do you make your own pasta or you like going out and buying pasta?
No, I'm not that talented. Yeah, I just buy it in a box and heat it up in some water.
Very cool. Very cool. What's your favorite social media platform?
TikTok. I love
TikTok.
TikTok. I think it's so entertaining. It might
Uh-huh.
be too entertaining. You can waste a lot of time on there, but I think it's just a really fun platform. It's like not about like showing off how cool you are or anything like that. It's like a mixture of all things of like you can show off like really cool places you've gone to, or you can talk about embarrassing moments. Like I think it's just a really enjoyable platform on there. Like I never leave the platform like sad. And that like makes sense. So yeah, I love TikTok.
That's fantastic. What's your favorite genre of music?
Probably pop. I'm a
Okay.
big like Justin Timberlake fan. I've been a Justin Timberlake fan since I was in like first grade. Um, love Bruno Mars. So I'd probably say like the pop genre.
Nice. If you could only listen to one Justin Timberlake song for the rest of your life, what song are you picking?
Oh, I think Rock Your Body. Every time
That's a
that
good
song comes
one.
on, it like puts me in a good
Yeah.
mood. It's so good.
That's a good one. If you weren't working in the sports media industry, what would you be doing?
I think really working in dance or some sort of entertainment aspect. I think if it wasn't sports, it would be some sort of job in the entertainment industry.
Very nice. A couple more for you. What's your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve. This is so weird, but I hate like if I find a hair in my food, like just like call it a day. Like
Oh,
I cannot stand, I don't know what, it just like grosses me out so much. Hair in my food, like I just can't. And that and like chewing gum, people hearing people chew gum. I'm like, don't chew gum. I always have mints on me. I just can't stand the sound of like people like saliva in their mouth and like it just like grosses me out.
no, yeah, that grosses a lot of people out. What's your favorite quote of all time?
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That's a
That
great one.
and
Mm-hmm.
work hard and be kind to people. I like
Yep,
that as well.
love that. What are your three favorite hobbies to do that are not sports related?
I like reading books, dancing. What else? And I love a good reality TV show. Nothing brings me more joy than like after a long week, just laying in my bed and catching up on like all the shows on Bravo. I love that.
That's awesome. And last one for you here. What's one fun fact that a lot of people do not know about Lisa Redmond?
Oh, that's tough. I wish I had a fun fact. Um, oh man, I have to think about this. Um, I guess I always use this fun fact sometimes. I tried out to be a Ravens cheerleader a couple years ago, going back to my fandom of the Ravens. Didn't make the team, but was really proud of myself for doing it. And so whenever I don't really tell a lot of people about it, just because it wasn't like a big deal and it was so many years ago. But yeah, I tried out to be a Ravens cheerleader once.
That's awesome. That's really cool. That sounds like something that's really fun. All right,
Yeah.
Lisa. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. You've done incredible things in the sports media industry, the PLL. You're doing a great job there. So just keep up the great work and can't wait to see what the future has in store for you.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, fellas. So that was a Sports Student interview with Lisa Redmond. Another big shout out to Lisa for coming on the podcast today. She was a great guest to have on. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so you do not miss a single new episode of a Sports Student interview. But that'll do it for today's podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it as always, and I will see you guys in my next one. All right, y'all. Take care. Sports Student signing out. Peace.